Hey guys, welcome back to the Golf Podcast. This is episode number 357. Happy New Year.
That's right.
What was that Seinfeld? Like how late in the
February.
year? Was it February?
I think February is when
because I once got Happy New Year in February.
Someone got Happy. I think it was Elaine got Happy New Year in like March.
In March. I was thinking it was March too
Yes.
on my way in.
Right.
But yeah, so last week we talked about our goals, the first episode of the new year, which is something we like to do annually. It's become like quite a tradition. And I think this week we're going to kind of build off of that. I think it's a nice segue in our instructional topic this week was we're going to talk about a few of the things that might be holding you back from finally breaking 90. And no doubt in my mind, I'm sure there's a few of you, we challenge you guys with setting some of your own goals. And I'm sure there's quite a few of you out there who, may have set that as your goal, breaking 90. But one thing I will say too is if you are one of the more avid golfers who's listening and you're breaking 90 regularly, still going to want to tune into this because there's some things that we're going to talk about that universally are going to help you no matter what level you're at.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, some of this stuff that if you're regular breaking 90, you realize, yes, that's part of my game plan. We're going to talk strategy. But there's other things, like I said, it's a good reminder to maintain focus on them.
Do you remember when you broke 90? Now you played high school golf, so you probably can't remember.
Right, I probably first broke 90 when I was younger. So,
Yeah.
but in not saying one thing I will say is that we don't break 90 every time we go out there.
Absolutely right.
You and I were both 11 handicap.
Yeah.
Right. So we should be shooting in the 80s, but we play difficult courses. We have bad days. There are days when we're shooting above 90.
Yeah, we'll see 90s on the scorecard for sure.
But how about you? You have that crazy memory.
So crazy memory. So I remember the exact place. It was this golf course in Bloomfield, New Jersey. I think it's called like Hendricks Farm or something. I gotta fact check that, but I have the Instagram post from 443 weeks ago, guys. Check this out. It's June 28th, 2012. I shot an 89, and I took a photo of I guess it was my finishing putt on the 18th hole here. And
I love how it's with those old
school Instagrams that we thought were cool.
Yeah, those old filters. Yeah.
But yeah, man. We're talking 8 years ago. It's funny. This was 2020 was the year where I broke 80. It was an 8-year gap.
8-year gap.
But
I would say that that's probably pretty normal. I mean,
yeah, I would say so.
Golf is a game that it takes time to move to those big milestones. There is a world of difference between breaking 100, 90, and 80.
Absolutely.
There's a world of difference. But what I'm finding the more that we play and the more we learn this game is that difference is often not the things that we think of when we first start playing. That difference is not always these major swing changes.
Right.
It's often approaching the game smarter, avoiding getting yourself into trouble out there, and short game.
That's it. I mean, I can't even imagine breaking 70. It's almost you got to be a freak of nature.
Yeah.
What's
weird about like when you get to that level of breaking 70, it's more so it's not like you're doing something vastly different. It's that at that point you're doing it every time you're doing it right.
Absolutely.
So like on certain holes, everything is clicking. We talked about this before. We said like in our goals episode, we said hitting greens in regulation, hit a fairway, hit a greens in regulation. So for us, it's like, we're great if we do that 40% of the time.
Right.
The difference just is now you're doing it almost every time you're hitting your green in regulation. And it's largely just from consistency of execution.
That's just it. We don't have that consistency in our games.
It's the hardest thing to find. It's the hardest thing to find. But we dive into it here on the podcast each week. And we talk about things like pre-shot routine, strategy, discipline, things that go into it. But again, it's a learning process. It's a learning process for us. So if you're new to the show, one big thing we say often is that we're not instructors. We're not professional golfers. We're guys who are learning and struggling as we go. So we're talking about the times when we struggle through it as well, celebrating the successes when it happens and realizing, hey, what worked, what didn't work, and how can we do more of what worked. So yeah, there's some stuff there that, like I said, we can distill it down, and we'll talk in a moment, like I said, about those things breaking 90. If you didn't get a chance, though, to listen to last week's goals episode, I know it was one of our longer episodes, but it's one of our favorite episodes we do each year, where we go back, we look at all the goals we set for the previous year, where we fell, did we hit it, did we not hit it, and then we look forward and set some new goals. So we set a bunch of new goals for ourselves this year. We're going to be tracking a lot of those stats on our shot scope watches, which really helps, makes life a little bit easier, but I'm excited to do it. All right, I want to talk about this week's Twitter tap-in. Before we do, of course, we want to thank our sponsor, Titleist. Titleist TSI drivers represent the best of Titleist's peerless pursuit of speed. They continue to invest in the minds, materials, and technologies it takes to push the boundaries of speed while sacrificing nothing when it comes to performance. It's built on the breakthrough advances of the TS. Mike, you and I both had a lot of success gaming the TS drivers. We were very impressed with them. Titleist also learned a lot by putting those out there onto tour and into the marketplace, and realizing the things that they did well and the things that they could do even better. And those things that they can do even better, they put into the TSI series. So it's more than just an extension of the franchise. It's an investment of your game. It'll pay dividends for years to come. So guys, visit Titleist.com to learn more about the TSI drivers. Make this the year you go out and try them, because they are really incredible.
They are.
And the fairway metals as well. We just put the 3 woods in the bag. The TSI, it's just terrific.
Dude, stitching together that what's in the bag, that's coming out of mine. I went back to the driver fitting, and I just went through all those numbers again.
Yeah.
Staggering.
So
you see, I put them in there. Some of those ball speeds, those club speeds. Amazing.
Yeah. And all that without losing any of that forgiveness
Right.
that we were getting. So it really is a nice upgrade from the TS. All right, Twitter tap-in. If you guys aren't already following us on Twitter, make sure you do so at Golficity, so you can be a part of the Twitter tap-in each week. We post these on Monday, give you guys a couple of days to respond, so that we can hop in there and talk about some of your answers here on the show when we record. So this week we asked, how often do you opt to play 9 holes instead of a full 18? And I think 9, Mike, is something it's often it's overlooked. It's not given the appreciation that it should, because obviously as golfers, we want to be out on the golf course all day. If we could play 18, play 18. But a big kind of restriction that people often talk about golf is how long it takes to play. And a lot of times in our busy lives, we don't have the 4 hours it takes to play 18 holes. But the nice part about 9 is even a score. You can enter a score for your handicap.
That's right.
I find that it's enough golf to give you your fix. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it will leave you wanting a little bit more. So I wanted to see what people had to say. Answering for ourselves, Mike. I mean, we do it occasionally.
Some of our best videos have been over 9 holes.
9 holes, yeah.
And I personally prefer the 9 hole with the occasional 18 of that bucket list track. I'm not going to walk off of Somerset Hills or Baltus Roll after 9.
Right.
You want that full experience. But if it's the local muni, it's after work. You don't want to be away from the kids or the spouse for a long time. You just want to get some work in, because the best place to get your work in is out on the course, over the range. And I think that's the best place to do it. So as a practice, because that's what we're doing over those 9 holes. We're not competing. We're just out there to get better and to have fun. And 9 holes for me all day. Yeah,
and I like it, like I said, as my fix. Like very often, if I'm just playing that just for fun round to go after work, especially in the summer, we get that a little bit more daylight hour to go over at 5 o'clock, play 9 holes, be done. And there's a lot of leagues that do this. A lot of leagues that are structured around some of the golf courses, and it's 9 holes. I do think it's a smart way to, like I said, get out there and play. But let's look at some of these responses. Let me see if there's any there that you think stand out, Mike.
Yeah, so let's jump right at the top. Our own Eric Benzenberg, who writes for the site, guys. If you haven't seen it already, Eric does a lot of great equipment reviews and things. He says Twilight 9s during the summer on weekdays, just like you were saying. KC loves golf. It is 100% based on time. I agree.
Yeah.
If I don't have time for 18, then I will go with 9. Some golf is better than no golf.
There you go. And then, of course, there's always some guys who are more fortunate than the rest of us. Like Kaysen says, he said, every now and then I opt to play 18 instead of 36. Well, all I could say is God bless you. You out there playing 36 on a regular basis.
Only going to play 18 today, guys.
Yeah. I mean, for all you guys out there, young guys who are still in that time of your life when you're not as obligated to a lot of things, all I can tell you, if I'm speaking to my old self, old Frank, 20-year-old Frank, would be get out there and play 36 as much as you can, because it does get rarer as you get a little bit older. But hey, we were fortunate when we were in Scotland, we played 36 every single day.
That was sweet.
That's what those golf trips are great for.
That was sweet. What else we got? Mike Sapici, not enough. 9 holes is not enough. And along those lines, Jay Browning, never. He'll never play 9 holes. He goes to full 18. And then on top of that, you got Joe Stevens. It says, this is interesting, rarely play 9. It's a struggle to get into it. Yeah. Only really get into the swing of things until the 4th hole. So maybe you don't even warm up till midway through 9 and you got to go the full distance,
Yeah, and look, I mean, we've talked about that a little bit here on the podcast. One thing is, if you do find yourself not playing well until into your round, I would give a hard look at your kind of warm-up routine. And I say that with a grain of salt because I know everyone's busy and it's tough to get out there. But some great advice that we got from Kevin Sprecher Parker last time I was there, and he just said just the amount of just warming up your body. He said oftentimes, first of all, muscles need to be warm in order to perform. If we just hop out there and play without getting them moving and getting that blood flowing, that can also often be what leads to not playing well until into the round a little bit.
Right.
Now, there could be other things too. There could be mental things, and you could talk about mental game. We could go down a whole podcast just on that. But one thing, again, a little takeaway, what Kevin had told us, he said, even if it's just in the locker room, just getting the body moving, just moving, stretching, rotating. He goes, once you start to build heat in those muscles, you'll be surprised at how that translates to when you first get out there.
You know, I played 9 once before work last summer, or 2 summers ago. I shot a 38 at Orchard Hills over here in Bergen County.
Yeah.
It was one of those ones where like, I want to go back on another loop, but I couldn't. I had to get to my office. So I could see it happening. I could see where you shoot a great score on 9, you just want to keep going, but you run out of daylight or something. And that's what I'm seeing the theme here. Everyone's writing. A lot of people are writing never, never, never. 8, 9 is not enough, to get that true score. And I don't know. I kind of disagree there.
I disagree in so much as
even
saying
shot scope
I
can
would
add it
rather
too.
it than nothing.
Yes.
I say look for it as those opportunities when you would normally say, I don't have an opportunity to play golf today because I don't have 4 hours to spare. If you've got the 2, go out there and play. Plus, you save a little bit of money playing half the round. But I do agree, there's one of the most frustrating things in golf is walking off that 9th hole with a great score going.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is tough.
That is
tough to do.
What else we got here? Matt Savage. My course is a 9-hole course. After work, it's 9 every day. Weekends, it's 27 to 36. Now that Korea is getting colder, 9 is perfect to keep my fundamentals in tune.
There you go. Yeah, it just really goes back. Here's Josh says it usually goes like this: impromptu round, 9 holes scheduled. You said that one?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reading through them as I'm trying to listen to you. But that stood out. Then clearly that stood out.
Clearly,
for me
it stood out.
Yeah. There's just so many great responses here.
But you'll see your mixed bag. A lot of people just not into 9.
Right. And look, again, it's like saying, I'm not into a McDonald's burger when I can have one from the steakhouse.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, of course, but like as golfers, we all want to play more golf. I'm just saying
we all want to go to the steakhouse, but sometimes we got to rip through that drive-through and get on with our
rip
life,
through,
right?
right.
We got to do it. I get it.
Then that's exactly what I mean. Like,
yes.
I would say just more so don't overlook it, because I think too many times we get to this all or nothing kind of mindset. To me, there's few things more relaxing than a twilight 9.
Yeah. It's peaceful.
Get out there,
summertime,
peaceful, unpressured, just getting out there and just, swinging for a couple of holes and grabbing a beer and going home. You know what I mean? Hard to beat that. All right, Mike, let's do a word from our sponsors. And then I want to talk about, now here we're talking 18, obviously, but we're going to talk about those few things that might be holding you back from finally hitting that magic number and breaking 90 and dipping into the 80s.
Sure thing, man. So this episode's brought to you by ShotScope, the all-in-one GPS and stat tracking watch. You wear it on your wrist, you load it up. While you get to the course, boom, you go off and play. What's going to happen behind the scenes, guys? Simple. ShotScope is going to track all of your data, all your shots. You hit the ball, you're like, how does it work? You wear a watch. How does it work? Everyone keeps asking me, how does it work? You hit your shot, and when you go up to your next shot, you strike it again. It's going to measure the distance from the previous shot. Records all of that, and we were talking about it on our stats, our goal episode last week. All those stats we would never be able to have without ShotScope. How many greens do we hit in a round?
You would take you out of your game if you had to have a pencil and paper.
It would be ridiculous. So
everyone.
we did that way back.
Greens and regulation and some fairways, but beyond that.
But then where are you entering those? Unless you're like go home and create some type of psychopathic spreadsheet, where like that's great. If you do that, God bless you. That's phenomenal. But hey, ShotScope takes all the work out of it. They do it for you. And what's cool about playing 9 holes, we just talked about, you can enter a score for 9 holes into ShotScope.
Yes, you can.
So just like your handicap, you can also enter it in there for stat tracking. So check them out. I mean, I know the V3s, which are the full stat tracking watch, they're sold out, until March, but there are some UK websites that you can find them on. There's some other websites of retailers that you could find them on if you really want to get it. Check it out.
But don't overlook the V2. Because this is, you can't beat this. They got them on sale for like 99 bucks right now, and they still do all the stat tracking that the V3 does. The V3, it just has its benefits of being a little bit smaller, better battery life, a little bit better GPS accuracy. But you
good way to dip the toe.
I would say, again, it's not an all or nothing thing. If you still want your stats, you can get into a V2 and get those stats while we're waiting for the V3s to be back.
Maybe that's just it, just to get your feet wet with stat tracking, because it could be new to a lot of us. It might not be for you. And if it's not for you, they have another model that is available called the G3, and that's just GPS, front, back, middle of the green, hazards, all that great stuff. Super small, colorful bands, really sleek display. Check them out.
And I would say
ShotScope.com.
what we don't say enough, Mike, the biggest highlight of ShotScope no subscription fee.
I love that.
Because it's something that's always getting better. They're always updating the courses. They're rolling out new features, and it's not something where you have to pay to unlock your stats or pay to retain your stats. You keep everything. I go back 3 seasons and look at every single round.
Isn't it great?
Right. No subscription fee. So it's no hidden cost. You buy the watch, you're done.
Dude, one click of the button, I want to see how my 3 putts improved over 1 year versus the next. Just like that.
Boom. Easy.
So guys, check them out. Shotscope.com/Golficity. Get in the game. Also want to thank Footjoy. Footjoy, the #1 outerwear brand in golf, committed to helping you extend the golf season as long as possible. It's freezing outside, guys, like 30 degrees. But we could still play golf. There's no snow on the ground anymore. It went away, so let's get out there. Let's play. Check out the Hydro Series or the Hydro Tour. Any of the rain jackets or winter jackets that Footjoy puts out are incredible. I am gaming the Hydro Tour. Love that jacket. I know you have one too, Frank. It's in my What's in the Bag video. I show you how easily it just rolls up. You stuff it in the bag. Waterproof, windproof, mobile, swinging through the ball. This is all the stuff we look for in outerwear because we want performance out of our outerwear. You don't want to wear the big George Costanza Gore-Tex jacket and go play golf. You'll never be able to perform. Yeah. You'll stay warm, but you won't be able to perform. Well, Footjoy, they've combined both. So play more golf this year. Get the gear you need to play in any condition that is thrown your way. Visit footjoy.com/MEDP. Frank, that fly is huge right there on that light, and it's just sitting there. I just want to get it.
Where is this fly even coming from?
I don't know.
He
just wants to listen to the show. Let's let him hang out.
It's January, and we've got a fly living in here. Unbelievable. Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about this week's topic.
Do it.
Let's talk about breaking 90. And again, this is coming from guys who work on this on a regular basis. For us, both of us, a good average everyday 18-hole score is going to be somewhere in the mid-80s. But like I said, that means it's within a couple shots of breaking 90. We're still working on it. We're still focused on it. And I think what the kind of magical part about this of breaking 90, I think there's a lot of golfers out there who feel like once they break 90, that's when they feel like they've turned the corner of being like a golfer. Now,
I could agree with that.
Yeah, and I could see that. I could put myself in those shoes. Now, personally, the more I play golf, the more I realize, like, if you just pick up a club, you're a golfer. If you're part of the community, you don't have to. I've said this before. You don't have to suit a certain score in order to have your card punched of being a golfer.
Correct.
If you're out there, you're having fun with your buddies, you're contributing to the game, you're playing your rounds, you're a golfer. But I understand how some people feel like that's what kind of validates it, is breaking 90. And it's something that is, I think, more rare than a lot of people think. If you actually look at the numbers, I haven't Googled them in a long time, but the percentage of golfers who ever actually break 90, it's actually not super high. So don't feel like you're disappointed or don't feel like there's a time frame. I have to break it by this amount of time. Don't forget, golf equates to the amount of work that you put in. So if you're somebody who's playing 10, 15 rounds per year, it can take you, as you said, many, many, many seasons to do it.
Definitely.
Now, on the other side, if you're I've seen before where people pick up the game and they're breaking 90 by the end of the year, but often what happens is it's because they dove in with 2 feet. They play, 80 rounds that year. They're taking lessons every week. They're at the range grinding it out. So it just depends on how much time you space out, in between those sessions,
right?
How accelerated in order to get there. But one thing to understand is on a regulation par 72 course, you need to average better than bogey per hole in order to break 90.
That's right.
So it is a good score. You've got to be knocking on the door of shooting par in order to do it. You still need some great shots to break 100. 100 still it's a respectable number to be shooting in the 90s, no doubt. But you can get away with a little bit more inconsistency in shooting those high 90s. If you're talking about knocking on the door, breaking 90, this is where consistency starts to really come in. And then again, going below that, like we talked about at the start of the show, breaking 80s, breaking 70s, it's just a matter of getting more and more consistent.
Yeah.
Doing it over and over. So, again, you want to write down that score that starts with an 8. You got to keep a couple of these things in mind, and we'll go through them. There's a couple good pointers here. The first one is, and this is something I talked about in my goals that I reviewed last week in the episode, was that I want to focus more on keeping the ball in play and making smarter decisions. Often what takes us away And for your average, pretty decent golfers who are right there, could be shooting in the 80s, what usually stops them, it's not that they've got a bunch of 6s and 7s on the card. It's that they got that 1 or 2 blow up holes. So you have to take a really good granular look and say, what caused that? And again, this is where stat tracking is great, but you can look in and you say, why did I blow up there? And what can I do to avoid it? Oftentimes what you'll find is that it's bad decision making.
That's it.
You played a shot. Now, of course, any one of us can have a bad shot and shank one, or whatever. But oftentimes that it's because you played a shot that, may have been something you weren't capable of doing. You got a little bit more aggressive than you needed to. You weren't, as we talk about being self-aware, you weren't as aware of your game as that you could have been, where you're saying, if I'm super aware, I know that that's a shot that's a low percentage for me. I may execute it once or twice, but that doesn't mean I'm going to execute it often enough to do weigh the risk versus reward. So double bogeys are not good news, but you can make up with those with a par or two. When you start making those triples or worse, that's where that damage might be too much to overcome to break that number. So there's ways you can do it, and we'll dive into those in a second. But do you agree? As far as that's where you often get in trouble.
Absolutely. And sometimes it isn't the sexiest thing to put the driver away on a tee box, if there's a little trouble up there. I mean, as newbie golfers, we're familiar with that driver, that big club. We'll get up there. We won't evaluate what's ahead. We won't play that smarter golf because we might not be thinking about it. But where, you kind of break that barrier and get into those 80s or hit those milestones is when you do take a step back and you're standing there and you see some water or you see some woods or some white stakes and you're like, all right, maybe let me just tone down to a 7-iron here.
Yeah.
It's hard for us beginners to do that, but that's just it.
It takes what we said before, discipline. It's not the sexiest thing to not go pin hunting, right? But then you think about it, it might not be as obvious as a tee shot with water or whatever. It might be something like a pin that a experienced smart golfer is going to realize that it's tucked, by some greenside bunkers. And rather than, if you go to the middle of that green, you play that safe bet, it may take 2 putts to get home. But again, what are we talking about avoiding? The triple bogey. Versus you go pin hunting, you end up in this greenside bunker, really short-sighted with the flag that's there. Then maybe you struggle to get out of the bunker or you hit it too far. Now you're on the other side of the green and you 3-putt from there. That's what I mean, the difference. It's sneaky. Golf kills us because it's not always obvious. It's little things that could have been avoided that lead to these chain reactions that all of a sudden you're like, what just happened? You end up walking out of a hole with an 8 and you're like, what just happened?
Yes.
And it might have been one bad decision that puts you into a spot to have to execute shots that you don't know yet.
Right. And classic example, you're going to love my memory here.
Here we go.
Mazellum Springs 12th hole. Par 5. You flew drone on this hole, actually. And it was where we saw Chris, the GM, up at the green. Remember that hole?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And classic mistake. I mean, not knowing my surroundings, not knowing the course where I was, I put the ball in the wrong spot on the green. Yes, I was up on the green putting, I think, for a birdie putt. It was a par 5 or a par putt. It was to save a good score. And I remember touching the ball and it went all the way off the green. I remember the guy saying, good luck trying to keep this on the green, because I didn't keep it below the hole. I didn't survey my land. I didn't come into that hole with a game plan. And I think I ended up getting a triple bogey on that hole. I screwed it all up. I was off the green. I had to chip back on. It was super fast. And it all could have been avoided if I played it a little bit differently.
That's it. I mean, those greens, they found ways to punish you. And that's it. Harder courses are going to find smarter ways to challenge golfers. But I think that that's a big part of it. Like, again, if you're in that zone where you're trying to break 90, if there's one thing to take away, it's just get yourself out of the tunnel vision. You get this tunnel vision, like, there's the pin, this is my yardage, that's what I'm hitting. But as I said, as you start to think like the smarter golfers think, which we push ourselves to do all the time, we got to have those reminders. You start to think about stuff like that, like stay under the hole. And oftentimes you'll get that advice from like starters and people like that who know the course. They'll say something to you, and oftentimes we think of it as like a formality. We say, oh, thanks, whatever. But listen, the local course knowledge is important. Like in that day, I remember them saying, guys, stay below the hole today.
Yes.
And you're just like, okay, sometimes you write it off as just general golf advice, but you realize then why that course was designed to punish you. It was really fast greens if you were up above the hole.
Right.
So that's one of our points. One is to stay under the hole. If you listen to the podcast regularly, we've talked about this, but if you're a new golfer, you might not know what we mean. And what we mean by that is ahead of your approach shot, look ahead at the green and try to put yourself in a position where you can have an uphill putt. Uphill putts, we talked a lot about putting over the last couple episodes. Uphill putts are always going to be easier. You are able to put a little bit more pace on them, take a little bit more breakout than those slippery, fast downhill putts. So instead of just saying, where's the pin and what's my distance to the pin and just firing at it, instead say, okay, what's the pin? What's the distance? Now, where do I need to be putting uphill, and try to make that your target? You're not going to hit your target every time, but if you make it your target, you're going to have a heck of a better chance of being in that position, and that will translate to less of these blow-up holes.
Dude, absolutely. So many times we just look at that number in the middle of our watch and say, that's the number we need. That's the club we need. But we're not thinking about the green, the speed of the greens, what's in front of the green. Is it an old Donnie Ross design with false fronts? It's going to bring the ball all the way back down the fairway. You got to think about that stuff. And like you said, the best way to do it is just visualize it. Visualize that miss. We're not pros. We're amateurs, right? So my miss, I mean, where do I want to miss this pin? I don't want to miss it right and be off the green. I don't want to miss it left and be off the green. I don't want to miss it long. I want to miss it short. So what club do I need? Where's the wind?
Right.
You know, variables. There's a lot of variables out there. So this is the type of stuff you got to think about.
It's incredible. If you want to learn a lot, watch on the PGA Tour. Go to a PGA Tour event when people can start safely going to events again, and watch the interaction between the caddy and the player and see what they're really talking about. The caddy's not saying, well, Jim, I need you to remember to keep your head down here. And he's not saying that. He's like, watch your takeaway.
Right.
They're analyzing wind,
everything,
conditions, how soft the conditions are, how much it's going to roll out, what you should play it like. If you can start to think like that, almost be your own caddy, pretend you're your own PGA Tour caddy out there. You'll learn from it.
Yeah, if we can't get back to an event anytime soon, just go on YouTube and type in like caddy sound bites, because it is interesting. They will say like it's 145 to the stick, wind coming off the left. I like a 138 number for you.
Right.
Or something. It's just a lot of factors that go into it.
There's variables that they think of that we take for granted, and we just get up there and hack away.
And you may be screaming at us going, guys, I'm not that good to be taking off errors, but it could be the difference of, 4 or 5 strokes in a round.
Yeah, and even if you're saying you're not that good to vary your distance by a couple of yards, just starting to get yourself in that mode of thinking like that. Plus, trust me on this, it may seem like a lot of work at first, but this is where you'll find even more enjoyment in the game, because it is those nuances that keep us thinking. Those are the reasons why as golfers we can go back and play the same course every weekend for 5 years, because things change. So as you understand and you work in those nuances more, and you start practice, because it does take practice thinking like a golfer, you'll get better at it. Yeah. And as your game gets better, your mental game and your strategy go right along and work right along with it.
That's the cherry on top. If you start thinking like a golfer, you start incorporating those thoughts in your swing process. Yeah. Now you start building confidence that, hey, I might be a golfer. Like, I feel like that real golfer that, I want to take this thing a little further, and it's going to motivate you a little more.
It does.
It really does.
As one added benefit, as you start to focus on strategy, you get to start to finally take your mind a little bit less off of execution. Oftentimes, if you find that you're one of those range guys who performs really well on the range, a lot of times it's because you're not thinking. You're just out there swinging, right? And one thing that we do is we kind of tie ourselves up in mental knots, thinking too much about the mechanics. You find, again, I know they're much better golfers, but tour pros are not thinking too much about their mechanics when they're out there. On the range a little bit, yes, but not when they're out there. If you find you start thinking more about where you want to hit it, where you want the ball to land, your mind starts to become occupied with that and less about mechanics, and you'll be surprised at how much it frees up your swing to think less about mechanics.
Absolutely. And I love this one about respecting the bunkers, because it's something we don't think about. Guys, if you are not good in the bunkers, stay away from them. Yes. If you want to break a certain milestone number, because it's interesting with bunkers. I mean, we don't get penalty strokes in bunkers, unlike a hazard, but the penalty could be trying to get out of these bunkers. Yeah. And we struggle. I mean, there are times where it takes me 2, maybe 3 times to get out of a bunker. I'm buried, all those different lies that you have. But you got to respect bunkers, and you got to know whether or not you're a good bunker player or not, because it could go part of that strategy.
100% could. That's the thing. I think bunkers are probably the most disrespected of all the hazards. We don't even think of them as hazards because there's no penalty stroke.
Because we'll just get out of it, right?
Right. But in the reality, No, I mean, you could be in a fairway bunker with a little bit of a lip that causes you, it's almost like a stroke penalty because you got to wedge it out to the side. I mean, we saw a lot of that in Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
We had bunkers that were deep pot bunkers in the middle of a fairway. And now I'm 150 out. There's no way I can get it up and to that green. So I'm like, it's almost like having a penalty. So I think that's a big thing. Again, if you're on that knocking on that door, respect the bunkers. We talk about this analogy before. It's like kind of like a football, like a quarterback surveying the defense. When you get up there, look, and then you'll start to even respect and understand course architecture more because you realize how architects do a great job sometimes of hiding bunkers.
Yes.
And this is where it's listening to local knowledge or learning it or looking at the yardage sheet if you had it or whatever it may be, because oftentimes you'll notice those bunkers aren't just sprinkled out there like just haphazardly. They're in landing zones.
Yeah, they know.
They know where to put those bunkers, and there's a reason for it. So respect those bunkers. And as Mike said earlier, another tip would be play it safe off the tee. Again, there's a reason. Golf, there's so much discipline that you learn in golf because things are there to tempt you. Now I'm thinking about the 11th hole at Hollowbrook. With all that water, and you look at a tee shot, right? And you're looking at a tee shot that facing out, the green is to the left, and it's all water. And basically what you have to decide is how much of that water you want to carry.
Yes.
The further and further you aim towards the green, the more you have to be perfect with your tee shot carrying. But they know that when they design the course, they want you to be up there and be like, oh man, I can.
They want you to John Daly to Bay Hill.
If I go, Bay Hill, John Daly, but you're introducing a lot of risk.
Right.
And that is where the less disciplined golfer who goes for it walks away with the big number on the card.
Yeah.
Versus the hardest thing to do is to stick to that game plan when you really want to do it. You want to go up there and rip one. Save that for when you're playing a scramble and you're the anchor.
I love it.
And everybody's safe in the you even said that day. You said, Frank, if we were playing best ball, I'd let you hit a ball out in this fairway and I'd rip it for this green. Right?
But we were doing worse ball.
Every shot mattered. So we got into the situation where we'd be like, we both played a little safer. So playing it safe off the tee is a really big one. Another thing too, another big tip is just trying not to do too much. Oftentimes, again, especially if you haven't broken 90 yet, it starts to become like this weight and you think of it as such a big thing. But instead of trying to be like the tour players and hit every green and doing all these things that might be outside of your capability right now, if you can just more so shift your focus to not having any big mistakes, playing a little bit smarter, safer, it might be the quicker route to breaking 90 than trying to, as I said, execute things that you may not know how to execute.
That's true.
For example, let's say you're faced with this shot where you're on the right side of the hole, wood line to the right, and the green is kind of a dog leg right, so it bends around, so it's protected by those trees. Now you might be thinking, all right, for my second shot, I want my green in regulation. This is where I'm thinking about doing too much. What I can do is I can play a nice high fade that fades along this tree line, and I can get to that green. And then what happens is, if that's not in your arsenal, if you're not the type of golfer who can execute that every time, and you try to do too much, you try to play the shot that you can't, now you flirt with the woods, it ends up clipping a tree, kicking into the woods, and you're OB, or red staked, or something like that. Versus the mindset of saying, let's get away from this with no big mistakes. And instead of going for my green in regulation, I'm going to hit wedge out to the fairway, and then I'll have a clean wedge in to the green. And now I'm putting for par. Worst case, 2-putt bogey.
And move on.
Right. Yep. That's what I mean about doing too much. Now, as you become a better and better golfer, you remember, hey, I want to learn how to hit that high fade and work on it on the range until the point where you feel comfortable enough that it becomes a smart decision to play it there. But until it's a smart decision, don't try to do too much. Try to be the hero.
Yeah.
When instead you say, what you can actually think about it. I got two paths to go here: the hero path and the don't make the mistake path.
The hero path works maybe 1 out of every 100 times. And when
depending
it does,
on the
it's great.
golfer.
Yeah, you're a hero. It feels good, but it doesn't happen often.
And when you're a hero all the time, you're on the PGA
That's
Tour.
exactly it.
That's the difference.
I mean, we do have that high fade in our bag every now and then, but like you said, if it's not in our bag of tricks, you can't really rely on it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't.
Because it'll be a blow up.
And a good way to do this and not put too much stress on yourself is before your round, try to create a more or less shot by shot strategy. You can, every golf course nowadays, you can go and you can get online, you can get the layout. You know, you can you go and you search the golf course, and usually they'll show the hole by hole, and you can look at it ahead of time and create a strategy for yourself. Then it's a little bit less pressure to each time try to have a strategy. Instead, you just kind of go back to the strategy you had. Like, this is the strategy of how I want to play this hole. And if you have that game plan going into it, then it just becomes a level of discipline of sticking with the plan.
Right.
And a few times you may have to react to a bad shot that gets away from the plan. But really what the next shot should be is just, how do I get this ball back into play to continue with my plan?
Yeah.
Versus, let me throw the entire plan out the window. And this is what happens often with these blow up holes. We get more and more and more aggressive because we're trying to salvage the hole. But each time we're digging our grave deeper and deeper.
Right.
You know, think about those times when you push it into like the woods a little bit, but you're saying, I got a clearing, I can punch it towards the green.
That's Mike right there.
Right,
Yep.
right. And then sometimes you'll be the hero who does thread the needle and get it on the green. But other times it's going to hit one of those trees and rock it even further, you know, out into the woods versus, all right, I'm away from my game plan because I didn't execute that shot. Let me just punch this back into the fairway where I can get back to my game plan, which is being about 100 yards out for a wedge shot, whatever it may be. But that's what I mean. We just dig ourselves deeper and deeper because we just try to be the hero over and over and over.
We get frustrated. Right.
Yeah. And then that's, again, where the 8s come in. 8s, 9s, 10s. So that's an important one.
Scorecard killers.
And then a big one to realize is nerves. We're human beings.
Yeah.
The reality is we have to understand that it's an emotional process too while we're out there, and nerves happen. And especially if you're somebody who's tallying the score as you go, or even just mentally just realizing, hey, I'm playing pretty well. And this might be that first time I break 90. You got to know you're going to get nervous. But the difference again between good golfers and newer golfers is that good golfers don't try to avoid being nervous. They just realize that they are nervous, and then they're able to adapt to it. Right. So, being, and again, there's all different things that we've talked about before about like pre-shot routine and anything that causes you to focus on that. But as you practice pressure, as you're in more pressure situations, you'll become more accustomed to it, because I think it's going down the wrong path of trying to teach yourself not to be nervous. The reality is you're going to be nervous.
You're going to be nervous. And this came into play for me when I broke 80 for the first time this year. I remember it was par 3, par 4, 17, 18. And I knew getting up to 17, that's when I looked at the scorecard. That was a wrong thing to do. But I knew I was getting close. And then I looked, in that par 3, I said, okay, so if I make par out, I'm 78. Beautiful. I ended up making a bogey on the par 3 17th. I said, all right, so I got to make par here. And the nerves were kicking in, dude. Oh, man, they were taking over me. And it was a drivable par 4 18th hole. So I went for it, pushed it to the right, chipped it up short of the green, putted it on for a long putt, made the putt for par. And I ran around like a fool, celebrating.
Yeah.
But the nerves did take over. I mean, and you feel it. And it's like, I got to find a way to get rid of those.
Yeah.
But
that's just it. I mean, instead of getting rid of it, just shifting your mindset to, first of all, we think of nerves as a bad thing, but nerves can be a good thing. You can realize, hey, I'm nervous because I am playing so well. Shift the way you're thinking. But again, if it's more so if the nerves cause changes in your body that you are not aware of, and then therefore can't react to, that's when you get into problems. Like nervous causes us to grip the club too tight, causes us to hit shots that we, daring shots that we normally wouldn't necessarily be able to hit. Here's where things like taking an inventory of like your body and taking a deep breath to relax your nerves and relax your muscles. Again, it's just more so of recognizing the nerves and responding rationally. And then again, being comfortable in the nervous situations. Think about Tiger, some of the pressure situations he's been in with the gallery down both sides. Do you really think Tiger's not nervous? No, he's nervous.
No, he's nervous.
He just knows how to deal with it. Why? Because he's been in this situation so many times. He's a guy who's was on late night shows at 3 years old, chipping.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He has the experience. So that's the thing to take out of the playbook. have the experience, and then look hard at your practice sessions, your range sessions. Are your range sessions just complete zero pressure, just out there, hitting balls? And if you're hitting them well, is it because there's no pressure? Then can you introduce some pressure? We've talked about it before, even on putting drills, introducing pressure where you have to make a sequence of putts, or on the range, mentally playing through a hole, picking targets that you have to hit. Now you're creating stress, creating pressure, and you're becoming adept in how to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's absolutely correct. I mean, when's the last round you think you've played? You were just, I'm thinking YouTube Golf Day, the last nerve-wracked round.
Nervous,
even more
that
nervous
day I
than,
was super frustrated with what I was playing, which caused a spiraling effect.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to have like a gallery of 20 people or so following you to watch you play.
Yeah.
It's not normal.
Yeah.
But those nerves were unique.
And I feel nerves every time we do those fun competitions where we're playing for something. Like if we get X amount of birdies, we can give away whatever. Because I feel the pressure of wanting to win things for the
There's
guys
no doubt
who are
pressure
watching at
helps.
home.
Pressure definitely helps.
And that's it. And the more we're in the pressure situations, the more I'm able to deal with it.
That's it.
So that's what it is. Instead of trying to become somebody who does not have nerves, you realize like that's not going to happen. You're a human being. You're going to be nervous. Instead, learn how to embrace it and work through it, and you'll become a better golfer for it.
I believe it.
So give these a try. I'm sure there's a lot more things that obviously go into breaking 90. If you've got some tips of your own, if there's something that helped you finally turn the corner and break 90, let us know. Post a comment below or post it in the Facebook group. We'd love to hear about it, as we say every week. But again, these are some things, at least some framework of a way to start thinking more like a golfer that's going to get you to that point. And again, notice there's nothing here we talked about of making a dramatic swing change.
Yeah.
So we want to get away from that thinking that it's necessarily that. Like if you've made a par before, it proves you're physically capable of doing it. So what's holding you back from doing it more often? What's holding you back from that consistency we're talking about? And it could be something of one of these things, some of these strategy things that you can work on. So, try these out when you're out there next time and see if it helps. If it does, let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Absolutely, man.
So
we always love to hear the tips from you guys as well.
We do. It's an ongoing conversation, both, like I said, in the comments and in the Facebook group. So if you want to get to the show notes for today's episode, go to golficity.com/episode 357, or as always in the Golficity app, which is available for Android and iOS. Again, Happy New Year. We'll see how late in the year we can say that to you guys. I think we'll be saying it forever because we're just happy to be through 2020 and into 2021. This year, I won't make the same mistake of jinxing it. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see everybody again next week.